time to hear from the voice of the creative economy, Vincent Heeringa from idealogue.co.nz, joining us this morning. Morning, Vincent.
Good morning.
And good morning.
I think it was a good morning.
It was a good morning, yes. We'll get your temperature, your take on the temperature of the election campaign at the moment, first of all.
Well, I was surprised that Labor didn't perform better after my predicting that they would, which just goes to show I shouldn't be in politics. They came out swinging and had I thought a very good first week, but those first round of polls have showed that they didn't do as well as I thought. They sort of crept over 30%, but they're still hovering a good 25 points behind National, and just seem to have a very difficult time knocking over the trust that New Zealanders have in John Key as a manager, as a politician leader, and kind of the trust they have in him to manage us through these very difficult economic times.
Interesting, on the front page of Stuff this morning, that they've done some kind of poll. They say John Key is considered a safe pair of hands in a crisis, but more voters believe he is more likely to lie than Phil Goff. So they trust him and they don't trust him.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how they, perhaps it's what we expect of politicians to, what was the expression he used, to work in a dynamic environment.
I think you find it was dynamic?
Dynamic.
Yes.
It's very close to demonic. I mean, it's kind of similar to, reminds me of Hillary Clinton saying, what did she say? I missaid something.
I did not have sexual relations.
Yes, that's right.
Was the one who her husband said, yes. Anyway.
What's emerging, though, Emma, we talked last week about it being the spreadsheet election, and that has continued with the two major parties trading blows over where the money is going to come from for these various spending projects, whether it's spending on welfare and family support, as Labor are wanting to do, or whether it's infrastructure and tax breaks, as National are wanting to do. And the interesting thing to me is that the minor parties continue to be marginalised. It feels like a first-past-the-post election. And it also feels, for the first time, like we really have quite a philosophical divide between the two main parties.
Yeah, I don't think at the moment anyone could say, the Labor, National, they're all the same, right? Because you could possibly say that maybe 3-5 years ago, but
yes.
Certainly not today, not in this election.
Well, that's why it feels like a first-past-the-post election. You have two philosophical approaches to managing the economy and growing New Zealand, and they feel obviously confident that they can articulate those. So you've got, and this morning it was further widened by National's announcement that they would fund, out of the miracle of the asset sales, they would fund a huge irrigation scheme in the South Island in Canterbury as a way of, I suppose, stimulating economic growth through the dairy industry there.
Yeah. At
the same time, holding firm on releasing the agricultural sector from the emissions trading scheme. So, and Labor, by contrast, are wanting to bring agriculture sooner into the emissions trading scheme.
And I know this is a whole other debate, but if that goes ahead, that irrigation scheme in Canterbury, that is an absolute tragedy for that region. Short-term economic gain for long-term environmental pain there in Canterbury.
Where does the water come from?
That is just going to be an absolute massacre.
Does it come from the rivers or from the aquifer, or will they be creating dams?
Dams, aquifers, drawing it from the water table below Canterbury, just an absolute disaster for that region long term. But it's where so many people only think in 3-year terms. So
yeah, that's right. Well, the government are quite right in needing to find ways to use infrastructure to grow the economy, and we have suffered a lack of infrastructure investment. Ironically, thanks to Jenny Shipley's government through the 90s, there was just no strategic investment in infrastructure, be it rail or roads or electricity, and so we're inheriting that legacy now. But yeah, very interesting election. I think for the first time, it feels like there are ideas being discussed at least.
Indeed. Let's talk about other ideas outside the election. Venture capital is something that small startups in New Zealand have been crying out for. Angel investors, where are they? We need this cash injection to grow our little businesses so we can export and create more wealth for New Zealand. Well, there's some good news on that front, right?
There is, insofar as winging his way for an afternoon to New Zealand, because that's what you do if you're an American billionaire. You come to Auckland, you come to New Zealand for an afternoon on your private jet. Is a very wealthy and very smart investor called Vinod Khosla, and he has made his money in Silicon Valley investing in companies like Apple and Sun Microsystems and many others. He, in recent years, probably the last 10 years, has placed all his bets on the green economy. I'm talking about clean technology like recycling water or purifying the air or solar, sustainable energy systems. So that's where he's putting his money and is visiting New Zealand to hear. He's already invested in a very cool company that we've talked about before, LanzaTech, who take the gases out of the tops of factories and turn it into fuel. Thanks to his investment in LanzaTech and the encouragement of Stephen Tyndall, Vinod Khosla is winging in for the afternoon to hear pitches from 5 other clean tech businesses in New Zealand.
And those businesses have already been chosen?
They have been chosen, yeah. It's not all clean tech either. One of them is Rex Bionics, who you might recall. They make the electronic legs for people that can't walk.
Right, cool.
And also Yike Bike, which is that very cool-looking electric bike that you sit on like a penny farthing and race around. So, he's a very interesting guy. He's only 56, incredibly wealthy,
wow.
multi-millionaire, 1.3 billion US, I think was what he's worth. So very nice to have a gentleman like that in New Zealand looking at our hopefully sustainable future.
Good, we'll keep an eye on that. And you're off to Israel.
I am indeed, speaking of clean tech. Now, the Israelis don't have much water, unlike Canterbury. Well, in fact, probably a lot like Canterbury. They are experts in recycling water and also have a very strong reputation in solar and electricity, solar cells and batteries and so forth. So I've been invited to go and have a technology tour of Israel. So I'm hoping we can get the technology to work. I will be reporting in from Tel Aviv next week.
Yeah, should be able to. That'll be fantastic.
I think we do have telephones in Tel Aviv.
I think they've got some very high-tech stuff there. I mean, there's a lot of great software companies come out of Israel, right?
One of the ironies, perhaps it's not ironic, they're just very clever. They have more startups per head of population than any other country in the world.
There you go. All right, well, travel safe, and hopefully we'll talk to you then.
Thank you, Wamo.